Hey, I'm Nicholas Prom, and you're watching Posers Must Die. Today I'm joined by a guest, my good friend Steve Weber, bassist for Manthus and Leathurbitch. And we are just going to have a little chat here today. Steve, thanks you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Um, so uh, we are really good buddies. And uh, I've seen Manthus a bunch of times. Terrific. You guys are so tight and professional, and I see you opening a lot of gigs these days. I think that's great. And I have not had the opportunity to see Leather I missed the last show, like something came up at the last minute, but I'm quite familiar with that. What's it like being in a band that sounds so much like Savage Grace?
Oh, um, it's fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of cool. It's like speed metal with glam lyrics. Like it's like it doesn't get more 80s, I think, than that, uh, which is pretty fun. Uh, um, I did want to ask about that. So Leather had been going for a while, and then you joined
hmm
versus you founded Manthus with Ben and Robbie. Uh, what is the kind of like difference in group dynamic between like joining an established band versus a band that you founded with other guys?
Sure. And I'm just gonna clarify briefly. I was part of a rhythm section package deal with Manthus, so I think I was one of the original people. Certainly, maybe I wasn't the first considered bass player person they considered for that role, but I came along with the drummer at the time. A drummer left, and I was like, I want to stick around and do this thing.
Oh,
So
okay.
I do feel like I've been there pretty much from the beginning. It was mostly an idea, Robbie's idea.
Yeah.
We weren't even sure what kind of subgenre we were going to be when that band started.
Right.
And when Ben got on board, I think we became more of like a traditional metal, if you can call it that, style.
Yeah.
Um, so, anyways, back to your original question. I didn't mean to digress.
Oh, you're good,
Uh,
buddy.
the For me, it was strange. I think I'm of the age where I remember when Jason Newsted joined Metallica,
Yeah.
and I had my own feelings about it. I think I was like into Metallica right around that time I was getting into them. I maybe didn't even notice it at first because I was a kid, but you hear stories after the fact about like hazing and things like that.
Yeah.
Certainly, there was none of that with Leather Bitch. They're all super nice guys, despite
Yeah.
all the leather. I mean, I don't want to spoil the narrative here or anything. They're super chill, nice guys. Um, but yeah, I definitely knew I was filling some shoes for other people. There was bass players that people loved in that band that were no
Yeah.
longer in it, and I was the new guy. So it's a
Sure.
little strange. It's like having one pack and then straying from the pack a little bit, enjoying another pack and learning the
Interesting.
dynamics.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I know like three other guys who have been in Leather because it's Meshack Babcock and Andrew Sylvia and Sebastian Silva. They're all guys I know that I have history with who have like been in that band, exited that band. So it's like this uh, I don't know. I just think it's kind of funny.
I like to
Um,
sometimes call it the heavy metal Poison Idea because I also know like five dudes have been in Poison Idea that
oh,
then they're none of the ones that you'd name off the top of your head necessarily.
oh right, yeah,
It's like the metal version of that, but maybe
yeah,
not as to the same extent. Yeah,
sure.
it's funny because like also too with Andy and Court, I was saying like if you got the three of us at like a family reunion or something, they'd probably be like, yeah, those guys, there are a bunch of blonde guys, like they could all be related. So
That's
I
fun.
I think so. Like I was at we played Frozen in Time festival down in Fresno, and
Oh
someone came up
no.
to talk to me, assuming that I was Court, and like talking about
Oh,
stories. And I was like, hey man, I don't know you. I'm new.
yeah. Oh,
And they're like, "Oh, okay." They're like, "You're yeah." They had another blonde. I'm like, "Yeah, we're all blonde bass players in this band."
Yeah. That's
I
kind of
think the
funny.
band originally was like, "Let's get a non-blonde bass player with facial hair," but they
Oh,
got me. You
oh
know?
man. That's pretty funny, bud. Oh, uh,
Yeah,
so,
it was just one of those. There should be a sitcom with all the bass players who've ever been in Leather. It would just be like a situational, comedy about a bunch of brothers who play bass and were in that band.
oh man,
I
you could call it low end.
oh yes, that would be
Yeah,
great.
there you go. Tell me about that Frozen in Time festival. That sounds like it's like a lot of retro sounding stuff. Am I right there?
Yeah, lots of retro sounding stuff. It's Trevor from The Haunt,
Oh yeah.
and he puts it on. He lives in Fresno,
Nice.
and yeah, he just invited a bunch of bands that kind of fall into, I guess, the traditional metal category.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it was really fun. It was great. I was excited because I had never seen Savage Master at that point, so
Oh,
getting to see
nice.
them, I always enjoy seeing Haunt. Manthus had also played with them, and Robbie also knows Trevor as well. So,
Nice.
uh, yeah, it was fun. It was like one of my first out of town gigs in a long time.
Nice.
So,
But a good fest, good time?
yeah, it was great.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I have to shout out to Robbie and apologize because I keep calling him Ricky, either in
Oh boy.
person or on this program. I don't know why I do that, but yeah. Sorry, man.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I'm gonna get probably some names wrong too if I haven't already. Um, yeah, no,
All good, buddy.
you should definitely not spell his name with an IE at the end. He doesn't like that.
Okay.
Don't ever call him Robert either.
Uh,
Seriously.
Duly noted. Thank you for that heads up. I did want to ask, who are some of your like go-to guys as far as bass players are concerned? Like your classic guys.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Okay.
Because I feel like no matter what genre I'm playing, the answer doesn't change.
Yeah.
Um, I think the number one guy that always jumps up is Geddy Lee. So
Yeah. I had
like,
a feeling you were going to say that. I love
if you
that.
were a criminal trying to get favorite bass player influences out of me, and you pull a gun on me, be like Geddy Lee, and like because it's just like the first thing that jumps to my head.
Sure.
And I think most people would say, "Oh yeah, Steve loves Geddy Lee," and I do. It's the
Yeah.
truth, you know.
Well, he's great.
But yeah, I think I actually got into Geddy Lee, and was even interested in checking out Rush after I'd already exhausted the entire Iron Maiden and Metallica discographies on
Wow.
cassette tape. So I
Nice.
was up to Seventh Son, and I think right before Injustice for All had or just came out maybe at that point.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need a third band to check out. So I was obviously Steve Harris is a huge influence to me. And that was probably more my decision to pick up the bass than anything. I'd previously played the guitar for a little while
Yeah.
as a real little kid and just it was like, oh man, I want to either play drums or bass. And I
Yeah.
was listening to Iron Maiden and I was like, why is that bass so awesome and why is it not that awesome in other music that you hear
Right.
other than like soul music or something, right?
Yeah. Well,
um Anyways, so yeah, and since I just said soul music, I grew up with the Blues Brothers in my household a lot, so Donald Duck Dunn's huge bass influence.
yeah.
All of that, the soul music, the bands artists he played with, Otis Redding, Sam and Dave, and stuff like that. It's just like that
Yeah.
was a real little kid for me love of music influence for the bass, and I loved the way he'd walk it.
I
Um,
love that, man.
yeah, so then and then Cliff Burton, obviously.
Yeah.
I knew that like Cliff played a Rickenbacker. I knew Geddy played a Rickenbacker.
Lemmy
Uh,
played a Rickenbacker, right?
by the time I think I had a Rickenbacker before I even got into Lemmy,
Yeah.
just in the chronology of where I was, or
Sure.
maybe before I owned any Motorhead albums.
Sure.
Um, for me, I was when I decided to take lessons because I needed an excuse to quit karate. So the guy I ended up with would give me chord charts for for songs and not tell me what songs they were. And if we were
Oh,
practicing on like triads or a certain thing in the lessons, he'd have me use them, and he'd break out a guitar and play them, and I'd have the job the bass player would have had of making a bass line. And he ended
sweet.
up doing the Beatles over and over again. And I probably studied Paul McCartney's bass playing more than anyone. So the big
Right.
secret for me is that, and if you watch me play and you hear the riffs I do a lot of the broom ding and like a lot of the sliding
Yeah.
that McCartney does, a lot of the
Yeah.
hammer-ons, not the
Yeah.
way other people do them, the way he does them. I don't do the muted hand on the bridge with my right hand. It would have been his left hand. Uh, but he's a huge influence. And I don't
Sure.
listen to a lot of the Beatles anymore. It's more my parents' music, but
Sure.
I still have to admit that's a big guy in my influences.
Absolutely. And it's I will say, uh, Paul and Steve Harris have this thing in common where it's like, it's unusual for a lot of stuff to be written from the bass and around the bass. In most acts, it's almost like an afterthought. Like, it's just part of the rhythm section, whatever, just put it in there, but who cares? Bury it in the mix. But when you're the leader and and a chief songwriter, it just brings a whole different kind of flavor to it. I think coming with bass as a starting point rather than treating it like an afterthought, like a lot of people do. Um, I think I don't know. But yeah, I think that tracks and that's cool, man. I mean, Beatles are part of like our musical DNA, man. It's so no shade on that. Um, I think that's a perfectly good segue to kind of talk about gear. Do you want to talk about like your rig and like what you use,
Yeah. I'm like super not a big gear nerd. I kind of
no?
want to be.
Right?
So like I think yeah, we even joke in Manthus that Robbie's like my tech guy, but he's also like the predominant songwriter and gets other the guitarist in the band. But I definitely like have come also at some point in my musical explorations got into punk and loved the just banging on a bass guitar
Yeah.
idea of like plug it in. I don't give a shit, turn it up. I don't know. So I've had to actually backtrack and go back to my roots of like, okay, what did all these great heavy metal artists or rock artists do to actually work these instruments? So but yeah, so I started off with a really crappy Lotus. It was like a knockoff Fender. It was pretty. It was a red body, black pickguard, and the
Okay.
neck bud pretty quickly on that. So my dream, obviously, as I mentioned before, is getting a Rickenbacker, and I'd already done a summer job where I illegally, as a 13-year-old, saved up money. It was in a kitchen, so it was just
Sure.
illegal for me to work that young.
Yeah.
I'm not naming names, even though I think statute of limitations passed on that.
Yeah.
Friends of friends.
Yeah.
So yeah, like food prep. I bought an amp, and then I was like, man, this is great. I'm a working guy. Who needs school, you know? But I stayed
Yeah.
in school, and then I was like, I want to get Rickenbacker. So the guitar shop in Scottsdale, Arizona, where I grew up, it was like impossible to see a Rickenbacker. There weren't guitar centers. You couldn't
Right.
just like go online and order a Rickenbacker. You see them
Right.
in magazines, you see them on albums, and then I was like, never saw one in real life. And then they
Yeah.
had one, and I was like, oh my god! So I begged my parents to put the down payment that I paid them back for, and so that was my first bass, and that's been my predominant bass for 30 some years. So I'm 48, and I got it when I was
Okay.
14.
Okay. Well, right on, man. That's
Yeah,
cool
so I
stuff.
played through that predominantly, especially in Manthus. I
Yeah.
was playing through a carving head in a 410 for the most part for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
I still have the 410 cab I use occasionally, um, along with the childhood heroes and fantasies. Now that I have a decent enough paycheck, I got a Galen Kruger. I always wanted one. I remember at one point, I think like Flea and Geddy Lee and Les Claypool, all the cool bass players in the magazines were
Sure.
always doing ads for Galen Kruger. And I got a really nice Class D amp, and it's like super light and super loud.
Yeah.
So I play through that head now pretty much exclusively.
Okay.
And I have different cabs depending on what the situation, what bands I'm playing in. But
Nice.
I have a 15-inch, I think, PV. and 410 Carvin. I can play through both of those. And then Robbie custom made a couple 12-inch speakers. So
Wow.
if you notice, Manthus has matching speakers. So Manthus, I
Oh,
play through that. Yeah.
well, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, am I correct in that I did I hear right that Leather and Manthus are now in writing mode for the next record? Uh,
That's correct.
okay. And this will be the first your first opportunity to record with Leather, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So what can you tell us about like how the songwriting's going, the process, uh anything like that?
Yeah. So when I joined Leather Bitch, I was basically having to cram learning an album that was about to come out.
Oh,
That's
right.
Shattered Vanity. So I didn't play on that record, obviously.
Right. Right.
That was Court, and he did a great job. It's been challenging for me to learn based on just having the record or digital files on my phone to play it. So I've kind of had to do some figuring it out or writing my own stuff to it.
Uh-huh.
No offense to Court or anything. I try to do my best to honor what he did on the record. Um, but yeah, so this has been great because I was like, yeah, I'm dying to do this, but I also have to know I have to pay my dues and not just jump in a band, and be like, yeah, let's start writing right away. Um, so I think we've been like playing shows. We didn't tour. We did the show in Fresno, and I think at one point Patrick just came from Mother Bitch, came to uh, rehearsal, and he was just playing something. And I don't think he told us that it was original. He just started playing
Oh,
something, and then we started jamming on it. And I think either that day or soon thereafter, like the next practice, we learned um, it was an original. And then when we were between drummers, we decided to just work on a couple newer songs.
yeah.
And it's so basically Patrick will come. Patrick's come sometimes. Alex will come sometimes with just chords and riffs, and it's like we sit and talk about it. And I mean, I don't contribute much to the shape of the chord structure, but it's really cool. It's really fun. It's really laid back.
Right on. Right on. So,
Yeah.
so you would say it's going well
Yeah,
with
I
the new
mean,
record. Yeah.
yeah, we're currently looking for a drummer. I don't know if you saw my post recently,
Oh,
and
yes, I did.
so we're basically having to write. For me, it's a challenge because we don't have a drummer, so I don't know what the
Yeah.
drums are doing. As the bass
Right.
player, that's a challenge.
Yeah.
Um, I try to be more of a traditional bass player in that sense. Sometimes I just do like what the guitar's doing, or I just do whatever I want to do
Sure.
in other projects. But yeah, so that's been a challenge for the running process. So hopefully we can get that. We have a plan in place if that doesn't work out. But for me, I've just been kind of imagining what drums would be like and playing a bass line around what I think that would sound like. So
Right.
it might change very drastically if we get like a studio drummer and I have to do it like in the moment. But I'm totally used to that too. So
Sure. Yeah. Um, because you've made records before. You made the Manthus album. You did a record with your old band Skullmaster, right?
yeah,
Okay. Uh, so okay. And then and Manthus, you guys are working on the next album as well, right?
that's correct. Yeah, it's pretty
Okay.
much written.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
the process for that record, for the Manthus songwriting in general, is different. Robbie pretty much has an idea exactly what it's going to look like.
Oh, okay.
Um, there's flexibility where like he'll be like, "Hey, you can do a bass thingy there," because I'm a bass player. I'll
Yeah.
play the root notes. I'll play what I'm asked to play. But I love when I get those little moments where I can just hot dog a little bit or riff it up.
Yeah.
That's so he tells me where those places are, and then I'm like an excited dog chasing after bone, and not listening to anything else he tells me because I'm not well trained. The dog analogy. Sorry,
It's
dogs are
okay.
great.
It's okay. Dogs are great.
Anyways, yeah. So he basically we have it. We just started. We decided. We just last night actually we're gonna really start learning the songs better because the rest of us, Robbie knows it all. He's
Oh,
done.
sure.
But
Sure.
the rest of us, it's like, all right, he's like, did you guys even practice this stuff? And we're like,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so it's about us learning it,
Yeah.
and then once we get it a little bit more familiar with it, we'll go in the studio and lay it down. So
Okay.
we have actually done a couple. I think you've heard a couple of the newer songs that we have
I've heard
put
at least one of the
recording.
newer songs, yes.
Yeah.
Which came off really well live. I didn't catch the title, but it was at that last show you guys played at the High Watermark. That was a really great set.
Oh, thank you.
That was about a month back, I think. Um,
Yeah.
one more question about the songwriting. Does Ben House, does he write the lyrics as well, or is Robbie say, here, sing this? You know?
There's instances where Robbie has pre-existing lyrics
Oh,
or has a very solid idea of what he'd like them to be.
oh,
Ben writes
okay.
most of the lyrics.
Okay.
From my understanding, Ben's and I used to be in bands where actually, believe it or not, I was a singer.
I believe
But
that.
it's insane. But he and I have talked, and his process was like mine. Like you almost have to get the melody in your head before you can formulate what words they are,
Totally.
because otherwise you could get a bunch of words, and it's hard to fit those words into where you want the melodies to go.
Exactly. And unless you're somebody who plays guitar too, for example, you should never write lyrics first. It's like, oh, because trying to cram something into a melody rather than something that flows with a melody that exists, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Uh, like, look at it's the difference between like look at Rob Halford lyrics or like Ronnie James Dio lyrics. Like the phrasing in a Dio song, it's like it's really tough because he's just cramming a lot of words in there, right? Uh, and I feel like Halford stuff, it's a little more rhythmically like on the beat. I don't know if I'm explaining this very good. I don't know enough theory, so I'm sorry.
No, I totally get what you were saying. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, yeah. So to answer your question, Ben definitely does the majority, I think, of the lyric writing and vocals. So he definitely, to say that he doesn't have a big part of the co-writing process because it's the vocals,
Hmm.
is incorrect. So he correctly speaking does.
Okay.
But it all starts with Robbie's ideas and his song structure and stuff. So
Sure. Well, it's good that you've got a monster guitar player, as kind of like that starting point. So, good on, good,
and
good.
I'm just feel super like grateful. I have like in both bands like three really great guitarists that I play with.
That's awesome, man.
And part of me is just like, I gotta go home and fucking practice bass. Or maybe I should practice bass less so that I'm not trying to take time away from all that stuff they're doing.
Oh,
Oh man. So it's like yeah, no, sorry. I just wanted to give a little shout out to the guitarists.
right on. Well, yeah, I mean, that's good. That's good. What did I have here? Real quick. I kind of crowdsourced with my co-hosts on the regular panel show. What is the origin of the name Manthus? Ooh.
Oh, that's a good one. Um Mantis was we had another name, and it was I can't remember, Mistavacaron, which
Oh,
is a little bit more to say.
yeah.
I've never cared what our band's name is. I just don't care. Like if they're
Okay.
good, I like them, and if they're not, and if so I didn't get into it, but there was some debate about it, and I remember Robbie being like, "You guys are all in bands with Skull on the name," and we're like, "Yeah," and I'm just like, "Yeah, I'm not right. Whatever. Let's just go with it. Got a
Yeah.
drummer, we got a name. Let's go." That's my experience. So so at some point, Ben, I think the story goes, Ben came up with Manthus, and it's short for Rhadamanthus, who's
Oh,
one of the Greek judges of the underworld in
whoa.
Greek mythology.
Okay.
So yeah, so we kind of made a name based on another name because Rhadamanthus is a lot.
It's kind of a mouthful,
Um,
sure.
it's tough because yeah, I mean, Um, so yeah, that's it, Manthus. Like there's
Okay.
no, I mean, I
It's a
think we
good
wanted
name.
to just be kind of shorter and catchier. And I think Ben actually we had answered this on a podcast recently that I was on with them, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to like be like, oh, that's when I was zoning out and looking at flyers on the
Right.
wall. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think Ben actually maybe had the font formulating the font as he was formulating the name, actual
Oh,
name, or something like that.
yeah. Well,
If that's
that's
even possible, it may not be,
that is
but
not a bad way to go about it, really. Because you want something that that rolls off the tongue, but also reads good. You know what I mean? Like,
mhm.
yeah. So right on. Okay, cool. Um, just checking my notes for stuff that I was going to ask you. I think I think I was just going to ask you some fun stuff now, okay?
Okay, yeah.
Oh, yes, and that. Um, you previously mentioned that you were from Scottsdale, Arizona, right? And Arizona is a hotbed of heavy metal. I mean, uh, Flotsam and Jetsam, Sacred Reich, Atrophy, Surgical Steel are all from there. Uh, did you get to see any of those bands growing up there?
Yeah, I got to see them. A lot of them at the time uh I was too young to see when I was
Right.
really into metal. I
Yeah.
started off metal was my first love. I'd say I probably after soul music, thanks
Yeah.
again to the Blues Brothers. But then I got into heavy metal and then it was like, whoa, this is like very active love.
Yeah.
And then I went on to punk and other genres, but the height of heavy metal in the like late 80s, early 90s, the height of it, I remember hearing about those bands, but like if you weren't 21, there weren't a lot, or they weren't opening
Yeah.
for somebody, you just weren't seeing them. I remember
Sure.
seeing Fight pretty early on.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I used to run into Rob Halford around town. I saw him at least twice that I can recall.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
Would you mind telling those stories? Because that's kind of amazing. Like, hey, Rob Halford, the metal god, lives in my town, and I met him a couple times. That's
Yeah. We were at a funeral in high school for a friend, and I was with
cool.
all my friends who were like mostly alternative rock kids or theater kids or
Yeah.
choir kids. And my closest friends who are more again alternative or punk rock. I was definitely playing that more of that stuff at the time. And we went to a funeral for a friend who had passed, a teenager,
Oh,
and we didn't know what to do after, but we thought it was in bad taste to go party afterwards. So we went to
yeah.
McDonald's in like super North Scottsdale,
Yeah.
and everyone else was super bummed out. I was bummed out too, but I was like,
Yeah.
I also haven't eaten and I need to eat, and we're at McDonald's. And
Yeah.
so I went to go get food. It makes me sound like a real asshole, insensitive asshole, but maybe I am.
No,
Who knows?
you're
Uh,
not.
so I'm standing in line at McDonald's, and there's this like guy in front of me, shaved head in this like red Adidas tracksuit. Um, and I was like, "Whoa, that's a bold statement, fashion statement for Scottsdale." But I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yo, you go, guy." And then I hear him talking. I'm like, "Oh, he's English too," and I'm like, he's English, and and then so he gets his meal in his tray, and he like turns around, and I was like, "Oh, Rob Halford," and like I went back to my friends, and he's like, "Hey," I think he said, "Hey, mate," or something like that, and I was like, "Oh," and then I was like, I'll take a quarter pounder meal or something. Let me come back." And I went to my friends. I'm like, "Shit, I just saw Rob Halford." And again, these guys, none of them were like metal, they didn't have metal
Right.
roots like me. So they're like, "Who's that?" And I'm like, "The singer of Judas Priest." And they're like, "They're dumb." And I'm like, "What?" And I was just like, no one else can appreciate this moment with me.
Oh,
Um, but it was great seeing him.
that's
Uh,
awesome.
cut to like a couple years later, going to a punk show. We went to see Pansy Division at
Oh,
the
okay.
Nile Theater in Mesa, Arizona. And again, I'm just telling lots of underage stories about drinking and partying, but
It's okay.
I
We all did it.
we got illegal, we got beer with like their fake ID or where I could buy beer, and we got kind of buzzed before the show. So like we were just being a bunch of young drunk punks,
Mm-hmm.
And I go in and I was going in the bathroom and I was peeing and I was standing at the urinal and I was just kind of like, whoa, I'm kind of wasted. And I just kind of like would never do this when I'm sober now, but I would never
Yeah.
do this as a sober or non drunk person. But I kind of looked at the dude next to me and as I looked back and I was like, yeah, that's Rob Halford. And I was like, hey, Rob Halford. And this time around I was like more like confident about it because I
Yeah.
was drinking. And,
Yeah.
and he's like,
Yeah.
hey. You could tell he's just like, why is this fucking kid talking to me while I'm trying to piss?
Right.
And I was just like, I was like, hey, I'm like, hey, it's so great to meet you. I'm a big fan. And I went to like shake my hand while still like peeing. And he's like, do you mind if we finish first? And I'm like, oh yeah, let's do that. And then I was like, totally like, okay, don't be obnoxious and stare at him. So I'm sitting washing my hands, and then he washes his hands, and
Yeah.
then nice to meet you, and then he just jets.
Yeah.
And then my friend Cody at the time runs in and he's like, Jesus, I just saw Rob Halford. I'm like, I just peed next to him. And they're like, what? And we were
That's
like, hell yeah, and then we went and
yeah.
saw Pansy Division and it was super fun.
That's fun. I wonder if Rob was there to see Pansy Division.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah. Um, but that's cool, man. I mean, brush brushes with godhood, like I mean um that that's just so neat. I mean, I know I'll never get to experience, something like that, just running into like a hero at McDonald's, but
You never know, man. Like I started thinking about all the weird stories I have like that where I met another one real quick before we go on to the next topic or whatever is
oh
like
yeah,
my ex-girlfriend, the first love and first heartbreak I had the when I was like again 14. So be
sure.
back before I met Rob Halford.
Oh yeah.
She was neighbors of Dave Ellefson, the bass
Oh
player
yeah.
from Megadeth.
Yeah.
So I would just go to her house and like middle school romance style, and then like the car would pull up and I'd be like, oh, and I'd be like craning my neck and to see if he was. Oh my god, the bass player. I know how to play Down Patrol. Oh my god, and like
Yeah.
um and then I remember like later on, a couple years later, being like her moving on and inviting my band to play. And one of my punk bands came, and again I was wasted. And I remember like talking crap on him in the backyard on the microphone. And then now I'm
Oh.
like, God, I hope he didn't hear like the bunch of like punk kids making fun of him on the microphone.
Oh.
Like it was like one of those dumb. I was just one of those dumb, drunk, obnoxious punks. So like
Sure.
that was kind of a bummer story. But
Yeah.
but he if he's listening, Dave, I'm sorry.
Did you ever get to meet him? He
No, I
seems
never. I think I did, but I think I was like so like knew that that could be a thing that I was like not processing.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that
Uh,
he's a nice guy, He seems like a nice guy,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. Like Alice Cooper used to play. He lived in Arizona too. That's another
Man.
one, and he
Yeah.
used to play the state fair every year. So you could go for like five, even high school. Like, but before that, you could go for like $5, get into the fair, go to the fair all day, and then just not pay additional charges and go see Alice Cooper
Oh, that's awesome.
every year. And when I met him, I didn't meet him until after Wayne's World came out. And I'm like,
Oh.
what a strain. I'm like, this is like, it's like art imitating life or life imitating art.
Yeah, I think that's life imitating art.
I met him at a friend's dad was doing his golf tournament that he did, and he was
Of
wearing like
course.
really old school like outfit, and I'm like, where are the snakes and stuff,
No snakes in the golf course. That's
unless the
wild.
rattlesnakes in Arizona, but
Oh yeah. Oh shit. But how was meeting Alice Cooper? Was that cool?
he was super cool too.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard Alice is very nice. So that's cool, man. I think it's Arizona. It's just like where rockers go to live. Uh and rock.
Totally.
Yeah, that's cool, man. So I was just gonna ask a few silly questions. These are all opinion based. Um,
Whoa, dude, you just like froze a little bit and you did that rock thing and it was like epic, man. It was sorry. I just
oh
had to
no, all
interject.
all good. Yeah, sometimes my internet connection is not perfect. We have moments of freezing on these calls, which sucks. But so Van Halen with Roth or Hagar for Steven?
Like I have to pick one?
Say that you had to, hypothetically. If you have, it's like, look, I enjoy both, but I'm just saying, like, if do you have a preference, maybe leaning on one more or another?
Well, I just want to briefly say 5150 was a very early cassette that I purchased. So that was my first like love of Van Halen.
I love that
But then
album.
I later like found 1984, and I probably this today would have to go David Lee Roth.
Yeah?
But um, I'm not like hating. I don't hate on Hagar at all. I love the
No.
Hagar. 5150 is a great record.
5150 is maybe my favorite Van Halen album. So I'm totally
Yeah,
there with you. And I love Sam's solo stuff too.
yeah.
His solo career is great. And Roth's solo stuff pretty good. Like Eat 'em and Smile, Skyscraper, but it kind of peters out after that, I think. So I don't know. But as far as solo careers, Sam, I think definitely wins. But so
Dude, if I'm having a bad day and I'm like, I don't want to live anymore, and I hear Yankee Rose, it makes me happy. It makes
well,
puts me in a good spot. Listening
well,
to that
there you
Steve
go.
Vai answering with his guitar, like what what, it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
dude. I mean,
yeah.
that's how can you not love that?
Yeah, no, that's super fun. That makes me want to ask, what do you think about Billy Sheehan as a bass player?
I I don't know. That's a good question because I remember knowing I should as a young person learning bass that I should like respect him and love him.
Sure.
But my introduction was the Mr. Big era. I saw them open
Oh,
Rush.
oh,
So that's kind of been his extent of it. I remember
oh,
looking at some
okay.
of his tabs in a bass player guitar magazine or something
Yeah,
and being like, oh yeah, that's super complicated. But
yeah,
like, but I even had trouble hearing that complicated part on the actual recordings or hearing it live because they were playing Mr. Big a lot on the radio at the
yeah.
time I'm talking about. So I maybe need to explore more of his work. Probably that's probably the
There you
best
go.
answer.
No,
But
that's a fair, fine answer. I would say, and I haven't heard this in a long time, but he had a band before he was in David Lee Roth, and definitely before Mr. Big, called Tallis,
yeah,
Talas, and they were more like a Shrapnel Records kind of Ingve Alcatraz kind of band, if I remember right. That might be more the stuff, I should say.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, I'm definitely gonna hit you up about that later when I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta ask. I want to check that out. Now's the time to listen to that.
there you go. Yeah. And it's like that's like the deep recess of the mind. I mean, I haven't heard Tallis in 25 years, probably, uh, at least. But yeah, okay. And then another goofy question. Well, I don't know. Uh, if you had to choose, if you have to choose between Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, who do you choose and why?
Iron Maiden.
Okay. Okay.
I I I had to get it out like that because Iron Maiden's probably my favorite band. I've
Okay.
decided like if I
Okay.
had to like yeah, probably. Um uh Having said that, like I mean there's like a Judas Priest poster on like
I was like, I see two
flyer
Priest
on my
posters
wall
right behind you.
there, you know?
So yeah.
Yeah, actually I moved this head too. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
actually was just rearranging. So I have like two so I love Judas Priest.
Same.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I there's and I can't I feel like a lot of people get in conversations about it where like they want to constantly pit them against each other, you know, in a
Sure.
binary sense, like binary
Yeah.
opposition or
Yeah.
either or type of situation. But I love them both. And I prefer, I mean, I don't prefer, there's times where I'd much rather listen to Judas Priest than Iron Maiden.
Sure.
But I also think too, you know, I just got, like I said, like, I think Number of the Beast was like the second heavy metal album I bought,
Oh wow.
legit heavy metal,
Yeah.
depending on your definition. And then after that, I didn't listen to anything else. I bought the entire everything they had on every album they had, like whenever I had in my allowance as a kid,
Yeah.
and it just formed me in a time of my life where I needed that kind of music to
Totally
who
understand.
I was. And there's never a time like maybe when I was a really hardcore punk, if you would be like, "Do you like Iron Man?" I'd be like, "Fuck them." Fucking,
Sure.
but like really if you like or like Steve, do you like Iron Man? I'd be like, hell yeah, I love them.
Yeah.
because just like, again, just makes me super happy to listen to him. At the
Yeah.
time, like I remember like when Judas Priest, I got a British Steel. I found it on
Yeah.
cassette, and I was
Nice.
like, and I kind of was like, yeah, I like Judas Priest, but they're like kind of more like classic, like Scorpions or something, like classic rock.
Sure. I love
And
Scorpions too. Oh man.
almost like rumbling beneath me, behind me, as soon as I was having these conversations with people, Painkiller came out, and I was
Yeah.
like, okay, maybe I'm wrong. And that's probably my favorite Judas Priest album
Yeah.
now. But I
Yeah.
remember when it came out and being like, oh, I don't know if I should get it. But I was like, they had samples of it at the mall and this little like cardboard sample player
Yeah.
thing. And I was just like, and then I when I finally got it, I was like, this is so awesome, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, if I had to pick Iron Maiden, long story short,
Oh yeah. And going back to what you're saying, like, people always kind of want to pit Maiden versus Priest, but really musically, yeah, they're both heavy metal and they're kind of like definitely like the chief vanguards of classic heavy metal. But like stylistically, the chalk and cheese, man. I mean, like we both saw Maiden and Priest like 4 days apart, right? We
yeah,
went to both those. And Chase and I went to those also. And and I was thinking, it's like, a Priest show and a Maiden show is as different vibe-wise as a Slayer show and a Rush show.
yeah,
You know what
interesting.
I mean? A
I can follow that. Yeah,
Maiden show is I mean, it's totally a heavy metal show, but it's very, very prog rock, you know. And Um, Priest is more about the aggression, you know what I mean? And I think Maiden is more the complexity and not that priests don't do complicated things too, but you know what I mean? Um
sure.
but yeah, but I think it's just always a good prompt for conversation. I mean, look, we've gone several minutes just on this topic. So,
Yeah,
uh
I mean, I think too the big thing about Priest for me these days is my love for Rob Halford. Not just because
yeah.
I peed next to him or saw him at McDonald's, but he was. I don't know if he was. I think he was sober when I saw him and didn't even know it.
Right.
Uh, and now he's such a someone I look to and as a popular celebrity in terms of I'm sober, as you know,
As am
and
I.
it's
Yeah.
so when he was talking a little bit at the concert, and I could
Yeah.
hear him like throwing little like wisdom, of
Yeah.
sobriety and the mental health piece that he does, and sometimes his posts on Instagram and stuff. If I'm having a bad day and I see that, it's like it's super important and it really matters to me,
Yeah.
So again, I love Judas Priest, but I think I'd pretty much pick Iron Maiden in any would be the answer if you put me against any other artist.
Totally understand. Again, this is totally subjective,
Yeah,
opinion based. So
hypothetical.
yeah, uh, but I get that, and I do love and appreciate Rob as like an icon for sobriety as well. I mean, like he similar to me when he made the decision. He's like, "This is it," and no one's forcing me to do this. I want to do it. I didn't know that when I made this choice to change my life, but it's so great to see that like one of my heroes, uh, it was a similar kind of thing. And I love that he's like 38 years sober now. And I'm just like, man, that is so awesome. And it's if he can do it, uh, I can keep doing it and you can keep doing it. And I
Yeah.
think that's really important, you know? So yeah, so right on. Um, One more silly question and then we'll wrap. Uh,
Okay.
do you have a preferred singer in Black Sabbath? And if so, who is that singer?
Whew. Um, I gotta go Ozzy on that one.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really like. I probably listen to more of the Dio records these days, than any of the Ozzy stuff. But
Yeah.
I feel like I've taught maybe by accident, maybe not so accidentally touched upon like my youth a lot as a musician and learning
Yeah.
the bass and stuff a lot in our conversation tonight. And my first band ever, which I haven't brought up yet, was called Tempest,
Oh, yeah.
Tempus, which is it's funny. It's kind of similar to Manthus. And I named that band. It was named after the barbarian god in R.A. Salvatore Forgotten Realms novel. That's
Okay.
how nerdy and awesome I was in middle school.
Sure.
And we did a talent show, my first concert ever, where I played bass live, and we each got to like vote on songs, and I voted on Black Sabbath.
The
And
song?
so the song Black Sabbath
Okay.
was my first concert. So
Oh,
whenever I
wow.
hear that, it gets me in the real good feels and the real nostalgic feels. So if I
Yeah.
didn't pick Ozzy, I think um, I would be not paying tribute to the fact that that first Black Sabbath record
Yeah.
uh, really inspired me as a young person,
Yeah. I
and
mean,
it's still great.
oh yeah, it's great. And like, I got love for the Aussie era of Sabbath. I mean, like Sabbath Bloody Sabbath and Sabotage especially. I like those ones a lot. So I feel you, man. I feel you on that. And again, opinion. So
Yeah,
it's
no,
it's definitely open for whatever we got you there. So cool, man. Well, hey Steve, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm glad that we could talk.
yeah, this is fun. This is
Yeah,
great. Um, Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
of course, man. You got any gigs coming up to plug or anything like that?
If you're, yes, for Manthus, I think we have a tentative early January show. If you're interested, check our social media.
Okay.
I believe now it's Manthus PNW, but
Okay.
I'm a sober metal nerd, and you can probably find me on the Instagram for this podcast. And please feel free to ask me if you about shows, or I can forward the Manthus account for you. Nothing lined up for Leather Bitch, but I would like to say if there's any aspiring drummers who can play double bass and you want to join Leather Bitch, hit me up as well.
Okay. Well, right on. Yes, Leather Bitch seeks drummer. So metal drummers seek Leather Bitch.
All
Uh,
right.
all right. Thanks so much, Steve. I really appreciate
Thanks,
you, pal.
Nicholas. Yeah.
All right, buddy.
All right. Thank you.
Oh yeah.